Hi, everybody. I'm John Lux. I'm the Executive Director of Film Florida, and welcome to Film Florida Friday. Film Florida Fridays are interactive conversations about current topics, initiatives, and relationship building in Florida's screen production industry. Excuse me. Today, we're highlighting marketing, advertising, and public relations. In a moment, our guests will introduce themselves, and then we'll ask a few questions. During that time, we're going to ask that everybody keep their microphones on mute to avoid background noise. Once we've gotten through initial questions, we'll open it up to the audience for questions and conversation, as we always do. At that time, please use the hand-raising function so we can call on you. We want this to be conversational and interactive, but we also don't want people talking over each other. We're going to ask everybody to keep their questions and comments brief in the interest of time and out of the fairness of others that want the opportunity as well. Film Florida Fridays are always free, as you know, but we hope you'll consider donating $20.24 to our 2024 fundraising campaign. That donation link will be posted in the chat box, and you can always find it on our website. With that, let's jump right in. So let's start with some quick introductions. Sheila, let's start with you.
Sheila Duffy-Lehrman, co-founder of a advertising and marketing agency, Tropic Survival. Comet Ads is our sister digital technology company and digital advertising company that my partner and I began after many years in the industry when online advertising became a thing. And we've recently received our second patent on an app, which is called UV, and it is a content generation tool, a branded content generation tool for social media with a reputation management component to it. And we're in our second round of beta since we blew the whole thing up and with feedback, and are looking forward to our future, a bright future with that.
And where's the company located?
We're located in North Miami. We started off on Lincoln Road, and then we were in the Design District, and then we went to North Miami, and we found success wherever, only because kind of doesn't matter where you are.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
What you do and how you do it.
And Tom, how about you? What's your story?
Well, I've been a unit publicist and in PR for about 30 years in New York and Los Angeles, and recently moved here to Southwest Florida. But at the risk of perhaps being too granular, when I got out of college, I worked for a big PR firm called Hill & Knowlton in New York City. And since I was a new kid on the block, one of the clients, a big energy firm located in Erie, Pennsylvania, had a need for promoting some initiatives that they had put in place there to allow more light to come into their factory, which sounds like a boring story, and it pretty much was. But they sent the new kid. They said, look, we're not going to, you have to drive or take a bus to Erie, Pennsylvania. And so my first time on a set really wasn't on a set. I went to this factory, and they had hired a local crew from the local television station, a sound guy and a camera guy. And I didn't know anything about what I was doing. And I learned the value of the crew people to help you negotiate and get your way through to the end of the goal that you had there. And that was to put a piece together for the network nightly news, and they had 16 millimeter film. I took that film back to New York City, worked with an editor, and I thought, this is a lot more fun than sitting behind a desk. And so from there, I went to PBS, and from PBS to HBO. And that's where I really learned the business there, when they were starting to do live entertainment. And then from there to Fox and to NBC and Showtime. And so I didn't look back. But at first, I had no idea of what to do. I had no ambitions. I didn't even know what the term unit publicist was. Mm-hmm. But I fell into it that way in an electric factory in Erie, Pennsylvania.
Yeah, you never know where those things are going to take you, right?
Oh yeah, you bet. You learn as you go.
Yep. Now, Sheila, you, as you mentioned, you're the founder and chief operating officer of Tropic Survival Advertising and Marketing. Talk about the company's early days. You mentioned kind of where you are right now with some of the more technological things, but how have you seen your part of the business evolve to the current offerings?
Well, I found Tom's background very interesting, and only because mine was very similar. I have an undergraduate degree in gerontology, the study of aging, and I got hired on Capitol Hill as a researcher for the chairman of the Select Committee on Aging subcommittee, and I was sort of legally brunette, and no one would help me. And so I started really sleeping at my desk and working really hard. And I ended up getting a senior professional staff slot at the full committee and CNN's, and I did the fraud and deceptive trade practices work. And so CNN, I had to market. I ended up not realizing it, but I was marketing my own hearings. I'd figure out, here's a problem, here's the solution, write up the legislation, get the white paper ready, brief the members, convince them this was a problem and here's a solution. And then we put on our little congressional hearing, our little dog and pony show, and work it from there. So CNN's investigative unit offered me a job, and I loved it. And I remember when I went to meet with them, I thought, finally, I'm going to get a story. I'm going to get something back from them, because I kept handing them complete, villains, victims, issue, the whole thing. And without realizing that I was actually marketing. And they said, what do you think about TV news? And I said, I watch it. And then NBC hired me away from CNN. And then when I married my husband, not making great strides for the feminist movement, I moved down to Miami and sort of took the essence of what I had learned to love about news. And that was the challenge, to make somebody think and feel in 30 seconds. And so I started freelancing from the TV stations' sales departments. And we'd get that same crew that Tom's referring to from the TV station. The sales department would call my partner and I up and say, we have a new advertiser. They need help producing a commercial. And I remember the first meeting we were in, someone said, well, do you think you could get this done in 6 weeks? And my partner and I, who was from the promotions department originally, I was from the news side, and we looked at each other and started laughing and said we could get it done that day. So we really developed and built our business working with television stations and sort of learning the marketing from there. And we really came at it originally as a production company, and we had our own in-house production, which was interesting and different, because most places you went to a production house to produce, and we did that as well. So in the early days, we really didn't have a lot of resources. So we started marketing. We could do pure creative, and we didn't have to shoot. So we went after movie trailers. And we really built our business doing promotions for films. And when we landed Lionsgate, I used to spend a lot of time at AFM and Toronto and Sundance. And it was pure creative. And what was great was the fact that it was so easy. It was just so simple, but so complex and difficult that we fell in love with it. So we did that for quite a while, and that's how we built our business.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Now, Tom, for those who may not know, kind of give the definition or the essential duties of what a unit publicist is and does.
Sure. Well, essentially, it's relationship building and plate spinning. You're hired either by the network or the studio or sometimes the production company, but you are the liaison between the production and the outside world. And usually, and Sheila will know, by the time you're starting in pre-production, the advertising people at the network and the marketing people have already begun the process of what is the messaging for this movie? What are the taglines? What do we want to get out of this? They got the approval from the director and the producers. And then what you need to be able to do as the unit publicist is to come in early in those pre-production meetings and get to know the department heads. You're going to need them later on when you start filming, and to let them know that you care as much as they do, and let them know who you are and that you're on the team. You don't materially provide anything for the production, but you're gathering the tools and the assets while the film is, or the series, or the show is in production, because once it wraps, you're done. And if you've forgotten to do something that you need for the advertising department or for the marketing department, the publicity, the photo people, you're stuck. So that's the plate spinning aspect of it. You need to be able to talk to the talent's PR people. And sometimes that's the biggest challenge, because a lot of these personal publicists feel very proprietary toward their clients, and they don't, want to be seen as someone being usurped by the unit publicist. So take them to lunch, breakfast, lunch, dinners, get to know them, and also all the key people that are working on the show, from the director down to the props and wardrobe. Know who they are too, because there are so many stories that can be generated, not just the main line of the story, but there are things that are going on in the props department that sometimes are interesting, wardrobe, production design. You got to get to know the lighting people, because when you bring in a camera crew to do the EPK, the electronic press kit, you're going to need lights. You're going to need people to move stuff around, because if it's a union shoot, you can't touch anything. So you got to have these people knowing what you're going to be doing on what days. And you have to break down that script. And probably the most important thing is to know the story as well as the writer knows the story. So look to see what scenes are being shot, look at the schedule and say, okay, these are the principal actors, and here's some good things that are going on that day. And maybe we can bring in Entertainment Tonight or the New York Times or the local newspaper even, and start to begin to do production promotion. But you, as that person who represents the film and or the series in the outside world, you've got to be, you have to have those relationships in place. I can't stress that enough.
Yeah.
So, and you have to have, excuse me, John, you have one more thing. You have to have some facility to write, to the press releases and the pitch materials, and to be able to speak clearly and quickly, and also stay out of the way of the production at the same time. So there's a lot going on for the unit publicist.
Well, and just like everything else in our industry, technology has completely changed how we do our jobs. Talk about that from your perspective. How has the technology changed how you approach things?
Well, it's not new news now, but the cell phone was the issue, the smartphone at the very beginning. I remember a shoot that was with a bunch of teenagers in the cast and 20 somethings, and they had their phones out the entire time. And I'm not talking about just the ringer while you're shooting, but they are taking over, and they're putting things on Facebook and they're putting things on Instagram, and they shouldn't be doing. So we had to put an end to that right away. Now it's artificial intelligence, which is an aid. It's not the answer. It can help you write certain things like blogs and maybe some other things that you want to put into it that gives you some perspective, but you can't rely on it completely. It can, as I say, inform you in some way, but there's no substitution for the human relationships that you form with that family and that production. So I think that those two things are the primary concerns, to keep those cell phones off the set, in the trailers or in your backpack somewhere where you can't get to it. Because sometimes in the storyline there are certain scenes that you don't want to give them away. It'll spoil everything, and you have to work with the photographers that are on set, the photographer, the stills photographer, and those kinds of things also have to be protected. you report back to the network every day and saying what's going on. And also, if there's any kind of crisis, you have to be ready to have a crisis plan in place. And it's usually the publicist who kicks that off, and then you have something in place. So there's a spokesperson already assigned who speaks with one voice. The most recent example is Rust and Alec Baldwin. So a lot of that could have been handled differently, I think, but it is what it is. But you got to be careful.
Well, and social media and cell phones and things like that, I mean, that could certainly help you and benefit you if it's done the right way. I mean, everybody loves those kind of behind the scenes, not necessarily on the set, but just, back in the trailers and in hair and makeup. I mean, to get that buzz going about a project. So do you now work with some of those people to say, this is what I want you to do, or how does that work?
Yeah, as long as you can control it. That's the thing.
Right.
That's the hard part as well. And you have to have meetings with these people to say, there are times in which you can do these things, but it all has to come through a certain source, and it's usually the publicist. Because if those people start going rogue, they have great intentions, but they may not fold into the messaging for the advertising and for the marketing. And some of the actors aren't appreciative of their image being, when they're in hair and makeup. So you have to get permission to do these things. You just can't do them without any kind of control.
Right. Now, Sheila, talk about, from your perspective, how have the client needs in the industry kind of evolved?
Just kicking off of what Tom just said, at the end of the day, people do business with people that they want to do business with. And that's generally true across the board for everything. So really getting to know everyone and valuing what everyone does and making sure that you share your appreciation for their effort goes a long way.
Cool.
It goes a long way.
And
I think I think our client needs, it's evident how we evolved in alignment with what our client needs were. And that was going into online advertising. And we were very early into that and developed our own technology regarding it so that our clients could, when we activated Comet Ads, which is our sister digital company, and we developed an app where our clients could follow their own campaigns in real time and gather the data, and they own the data because that's the currency with which everyone deals right now, is the data. I mean, if you're getting anything for free, you're the product. So, just like the social media ecosphere and what Tom was referencing in terms of, people shooting on set from their phones or pushing out content on social media. I mean, some movies are being shot on iPhones, but that's one of the reasons why in UV, which is our content generation tool, it's really geared towards large brands with a wide and diverse retail base. But the same thing is true. It has a reputation management application to it. So you can't push anything out onto your social media unless somebody approves it.
Yep.
So that's kind of how we've evolved with integrating technology into our work, evangelizing creative in many different ways.
Now, Sheila, you've worked on a number of different projects with different companies with great results. Do you have any favorite campaigns or any favorite stories?
Several. Some of which are just a shame spiral for me, so I won't let you know in on that. But sometimes some of your failures are your greatest achievements because you learn. And I have two, that one in with a hotel group that is a huge hotel group. I won't get into it, who they are, but they were absolutely came in. They sat in our conference room. They downloaded us with their whole branding campaign and all the psychosocial profiling that they did. And they had we were opening globally, we were opening, I think, 8 hotels within the span of 4 months, and in multiple languages, and it was getting a little nutty. And they had which was in particular for the Miami Beach hotel that they were opening, they had their ideal client, and his name was Adam. His favorite color was brown. He was a sexy kind of guy, maybe polyamorous. And he liked bourbon, and he worked on Wall Street, and he liked to get away for long weekends and party. And they even knew the kind of cigar he liked. So I'm sitting there. We do this campaign. It's LGBTQ. It's men. It's women. It's sexy. It's this whole thing, right? And we do it in alignment, completely in alignment with what they're outlining. And I'm tracking, and I'm call tracking, and we have different ad units with different phone numbers and different links so that we can curate and optimize the campaign and see where our engagement is coming from. What you all know what I'm talking about. So I'm listening now to these calls, and I'm up at night and I'm listening because they're recorded. It's families, young parents wanting to come down, and they're looking for family accommodations. There was no Adam in the mix. And we learned so much. I mean, it was almost impossible to go back to them. They shot the messenger with the raw data, with the real data, and they did not want to hear it. So it was a great lesson on account management, managing the technology that was emerging at the time, and what do you do with the information that you have, and how do you convey it? Sometimes you have to be really careful about that. And then the other was and it's one of my favorites, is for a medical company that, this is nothing related to film, but the point is, you never know where you're going to find your audience. You just don't. And it's a Hispanic owned and operated company that targets Hispanic senior citizens. So we we created an online campaign in English and Spanish. We targeted savvy online seniors and adult caregiving children during that 3-month open enrollment for Medicare, and in the fall. And they were insisting that we had to spend all this money on AARP. Well, if you're looking, which is a specific site by, and if you're looking for healthcare, where are you going to go, right? So it wasn't unfounded, but from their CEO down, were insisting on specific sites. So I took our own money and I did I threw a wide net. And do you know where we got the highest conversion? Conversion was adult online dating sites.
Perfect.
So
yeah, you never know, right?
Never know where you're going to find your audience.
Exactly, exactly. So, Tom, you've worked as a unit publicist on shows that people would probably recognize: George Wallace, The Blacklist, Hannibal. Those are just a few. Do you have a favorite project? Not doesn't have to be any of those, but just a kind of a favorite project that you've ever worked on, and why is that?
Sure. I worked with a filmmaker by the name of John Frankenheimer, who in the 60s was at the top of his game. He had done Birdman of Alcatraz, The Manchurian Candidate, Grand Prix. And over time, hubris got to him. He alienated himself from Hollywood, and he kind of exiled himself to Paris for many years. And I came into contact with him when he came back to the United States and was hired by HBO to do the story of the Attica prison riot. And it starred Sam Jackson and Clarence Williams III and Kyle MacLachlan. And it's shot in an old prison in Nashville. And so no one knew who Frankenheimer was then. And this is 1993. His heyday was in the mid to late 60s and early 70s. So I was tasked with trying to help this icon, reestablish himself. And so the network media, the broadcast, general broadcast media, national broadcast media, I should say, wasn't too interested. So I had to do local TV. And so they were happy to come down to see a movie being made. And so we were able to get him in front of a lot of cameras locally in Nashville. And then once those stories aired on the local television stations, the buzz started up a little bit. And then I had contacts, of course, at the networks. And I would say, hey, your local affiliate here, ABC in Nashville, has just run a story about Frankenheimer, and they would see it. And then that started to get some national attention, just little blurbs, items, mentions. But it worked so well that he had hired me on for the total of 4 films before he unfortunately died untimely death at 72. But it was, scrambling around, looking, not for the big hits, but for the little ones, and build upon that. And Samuel L. Jackson was a standout, and Clarence Williams III had already been done. He had done the TV series, and it escapes me now. It's three detectives, but anyway, they had this prison riot scene. Mod Squad. Thank you, Sheila. And but the props department created the real story. The prisoners had taken over the prison. And that was what the story was about. And so they had made, shivs, and they'd gone into the shop, and they made all sorts of, medieval type clubs and knives and all sorts of implements of death. And so the props guy had made all this stuff out of rubber, but you wouldn't know it. So, that was a story in itself as well. And then I'd get some calls from local media types, and they would call and say, we want to come down to the set to see the filming of Attica. They had never heard the word Attica. They hadn't seen Dog Day Afternoon. And so I said, first of all, you can't speak to Mr. Frankenheimer and mispronounce the name of the film. Attica is how you pronounce it. So there's all sorts of little things that get thrown at you along the way. But the idea is that there's so much around. And the production design, the film was shot in a prison, and there's a thing called prison architecture. The exterior of these facilities it looks like Disneyland's Magic Castle. They're just beautiful sandstone edifices, but behind it is the electric chair, right? So there's all sorts of different ways in which you can market and promote these things if you're looking and staying on your toes and staying ahead of the curve.
Now, you've worked on a number of different projects, whether it be independent films, miniseries, episodic, regular feature film.
Right.
Is there a difference between how you approach things depending on what type of project it is?
No, not really. The basics are the basics. You have a story. You have all of the people that I had mentioned before. There's always the suits. There's the network. There's the producers. There's the talent. There's the PR people. There's all of the production designer. The key office on set is the unit production manager's office. That is the heartbeat of everything. And if you are able to take some time and be in the table reads and the pre-production meetings, and they see you and know you and trust you, that your goals are in line with their goals, and your passions and your dedication is all about that film. That's the universe that you work in. Once you step outside the set and everybody goes home, then there's another world. It's your world. It's where you live with your family and friends. But when you go to work the next day, all that falls away, and you're either on location or inside the confines of a studio, and that's the most important place on earth at the time.
Yeah. Now, Sheila, you've served as the chair of the Miami-Dade County Film and Entertainment Board. Talk about, well, first of all, what is that for those that don't know, and talk about the experience.
It's the advisory board for the Office of Film and Entertainment for the county, and I sat on it for many years. I chaired it for many years and had the privilege of working with Sandy Leiterman, which is why she can absolutely mercilessly tease me, because it was a love affair. You don't always get to work with people that you enjoy and that you trust. And I think in production, actually, in all my years, we tended to keep the same crew, to work with the same team, because you're always wanting to make sure that you're in that, as Tom says, family, that you feel safe and that you trust the people around you, because there's thousands of decisions that you make that can have certain consequences that you really just want to make sure that you have to minimize your liabilities. So, working with Sandy was wonderful. And I don't think that people, I think people overestimate the impact of that board, and they also underestimate it. You're appointed by the commissioners and by the mayor, and there's also a seat for the League of Cities, I think. And your role is to represent the industry and also inform your appointing commissioner to make sure that you're getting the support that you need, that the industry is getting the support that it needs, and that they're well aware of the challenges that the industry and the allied industries that can be well impacted negatively and positively by their votes. The issue of the incentive, the state incentive, was something that we really took seriously, and advocating for that was something that we really tried. And I remember just before Sandy was the film commissioner, Jeff Peel was the film commissioner, and that's when I was appointed. And I was seated in a commission meeting as a member. I wasn't the chair yet. And we had lost the film incentive, and a lot of money had gone for the first time to digital industries in Central Florida. And we were left wondering, well, how did this happen? And what can we do to counter this and whatever? And the film incentive was gone, and people were sort of wringing their hands. And I said, well, forget the rest of the state. Let's figure out an incentive for Miami-Dade County. We're the crown jewel. And I had been the chairman of the Production Industry Council for the city of Miami Beach previous to that. I think I still was at that time. But they laughed me out of the room. So, in my usual rascally manner, got my underwear all twisted around and marched myself straight into my appointing chairwoman's office, and my appointing commissioner's office, Sally Heyman. And I said, well, this just happened and I'm mad because I think we can do something here. So Sandy then became the commissioner, and she made it happen. She breathed life into that idea, and she made it happen. She carried it over the goal line. She fought all the battles of conflicting interests and what's doable and reasonable and what could she get through, and so we had a local incentive, and even though it was not huge, it was the first. And now with the new chairperson coming, or the new commissioner coming in, it was time for me to go, and I mercifully seconded by 1,000% my replacement. And now I'm working behind the counter in Natchez, Mississippi at a bakery. But the new incentive that they're doing has great expectations and grand aspirations, and that's great. I tend to think that a regional incentive, because we've all gone up to Tallahassee and we've all testified and everybody's told us yes, 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 they all agree, and then it dies. So I'm still a big believer in a regional incentive, and I admire everything that Sandy's doing in Broward County as a traitor to Miami-Dade County, but I admire everything she's done to build a collective sense, like a real senses and a real collective consciousness about the importance, and how she's managed the politics at in Broward County. And I think that we will find true success if we do regional incentives.
I paid her a lot of money to say all that, but thank you, Sheila. That was awesome. Thank you.
At least somebody's paying me, because my daughter isn't.
Well, we appreciate the effort from the very beginning on the local incentive, because as we all know, those are extremely important to what we have right now. I'm going to pause real quick for those in the audience. If you do have questions, now's the time to start using that hand raising function that you can find on the bottom of the screen. And we're going to do one more question for each Sheila and Tom, and then we're going to hit audience questions. So Sheila, I want to stick with you. Besides budget, if a small company, smaller brand, has a need, what are some of the biggest challenges and opportunities that you try and exploit from your perspective?
Content, video, create, push out your content. Push out your content. You don't need to spend any money. Don't until you have the funding. Don't spend the money, because you can collateralize the marketing value of your content and roll that into a groundswell for funding.
Okay.
So as a creative person, hopefully your content will be really creative. So market it that way. Doesn't cost you a dime. Good advice. Good advice. Tom, Unit Publicist probably isn't, the top 5 jobs when
John.
people. Oh. Can you hear me?
I can.
Yeah. Okay.
John. There you are.
All right. Okay. So Tom, as I'm Unit Publicist, as a profession, probably isn't top 5 jobs when people think of being in our industry. But there may be somebody in the audience now that is thinking of the role, or hears this and thinks, wow, that actually seems pretty cool. What advice do you give to an aspiring unit publicist?
Well, I alluded to some of the basic skills early on, and writing is just that. The ability to write concisely, quickly, to move through the various pieces of making that film and looking to see where those story angles are, and to have them approved by the network and or the producer or the production company to make sure that what you're saying and putting out to the media is accurate and in line with the earlier stated goals of marketing and advertising. And the ability to, as I said, keep plates spinning. That's the biggest challenge, because on any given day, things happen and change and shift, and you've got to be able to, shift and change along with it. There's some plans that you may have made for the next day for, an onset visit by a local television, radio station, blogger, you name it, somebody that's coming in from the outside, then has to be put off a couple of days because you're obliged to take into consideration what the production company needs at that time. So you have to be able to have those relationships with, number one, the production company, and two, the outside people, and say, I'm sorry, have an answer for them though. Say, but we can do it maybe next Tuesday. And to be careful not to give away, when you have people come to the set, the storylines that may be spoilers, So, but the idea is to know the film, to enjoy that process. And sometimes it's laborious and boring, and especially as a unit publicist, you're not, as I said before, contributing to the material making of the film, but you're gathering the assets and tools while you're in production, because when that when it's wrapped and the wrap party's over, and you need to be able to then do the run up for the next year of starting to get the materials to the people who are going to submit it to film festivals and to the awards ceremony. All those things you have already gotten. So the advice is to understand that this is while not a celebrated position necessarily, but it's one of the cylinders on which the whole thing fires, certainly after the production is over.
Okay, good. Okay, we're going to go to a couple audience questions here. John, you got your hand up first, so I'm going to add your spotlight. Go ahead and unmute and go ahead and ask your question.
Okay, my question is, well, good morning, first and foremost, to everyone. My question is, how do I make my services known to members of Film Florida outside of the Film Florida Fridays panel?
You're asking, that's probably a question for me directly, and let's talk about that offline, John, and we'll figure out how we can help you get your message out a little bit more. Does that sound good? You go ahead and shoot me an email and I will respond and give you a couple of insights.
You told me to speak up during the Film Florida Fridays.
Well, I specifically said speak up.
No.
I specifically said the next one in May, because your services are more in line with that topic than this one. Okay. So let's circle back for next Film Florida Friday. But then if you want some other advice, you and I can talk offline.
Okay, I have one more question.
Okay.
I'm graduating this year with my bachelor's degree in film, television, and digital design. I have a best friend that has a PR firm, and my specialty has always been music. I've produced independent hip hop albums, blues / country folk albums, and I'm actually doing a documentary on both genres, on blues folk music in Miami and independent artists in Miami Gardens. And I just want to know, like, what do you think will be the best way that I could transition into the film industry to get more exposure for my work outside of film festivals? And like, how do I position myself better for the clients that I've been working with, like as far as hip hop artists and musicians, as far as producers and actors, and like, just where do you think I should try and take my next step as far as getting an internship or working in the industry?
I can take that. If I were
Anybody,
you,
please.
if I were you, I would, there are production music industry libraries, and because I'm so familiar with the music and the soundtracks, I mean, Hans Zimmer, even participates. And, you know, I would absolutely contact a company, look those up. Companies like APM, Associated Production Music, and I would get an internship with them. I would send them your music and see if they'd be willing to include it in their library. I write to music, and music is such an important element in the creative process that I actually write the last line of what I'm going to write, and then I find my soundtrack and I play it on repeat, because my scripts dance, my scripts are paced, and I know where I'm headed, and that's my little trick, right? But I don't think I'm unique. So production music libraries would be someplace I would start and try and get a toehold there.
And Sheila, is it most productions have a music supervisor, and they are tasked with providing various cuts and tracks that dovetail into the story and enhance it through music. So I don't know if they have a union, quite honestly, or they have an organization of any kind, but that might be something to look at, find out who they are. I think they're probably listed in all the credits in any movie ever made that had music in it, right?
Yeah, I mean, quite frankly, it's a legitimizer. It acts as a trust agent. If you're already in you've got a couple of tracks in a library, then you collateralize the marketing value of that, and then approach those music supervisors.
And the company's name is Associate Production Music.
Associated APM, Associated Production Music. It's based out of LA. Just Google it. Google music libraries, production music libraries.
Thank you, John. We are going to move on
Thank
to
you,
our next.
everybody.
Absolutely.
Sheila, especially.
And Sandy, you are up next, so I'm going to add your spotlight and go ahead and ask your question.
So I have two. Well, I have one for Tom and one for Sheila. Tom, the relationships, I guess the question would be, do you have to have really close relationships with the press, right? I mean, that's something that how do you get those, how do you develop those relationships? That's not so easy these days.
No, it's not. Again, it's the building relationships aspect of it. I think it's a lost art in terms of actually meeting people face to face.
Yeah.
A lot of them are very, very busy, of course. They'll always hide behind that, and they'll say, just send me a text or DM me. Say, you know what, you have to have a little more aggression and say, I'll meet you outside your office. Let's go around the corner of the Starbucks. To get in front of them is the key. And it takes a little more effort these days, but it's certainly more rewarding, and it changes everything once you're in front of somebody. And depending on the casting, everybody wants to talk to the hottest actor, and a lot of times you don't have that, and you got some new people who are extremely talented, and then that's when the relationships with the media really are important. The content of the story, the way in which you can present it. For Aaron Brockovich was not just about poison water. It was the courage of one person to stand up against that. And so the different story angles and storylines that you can present to the media to say, you know what, you may not, we might not have Matthew McConaughey or somebody else in this film, but here's the story and here's what it's about. And it's, that old thing, Aaron Brockovich meets something else, and the hybrid of that, to give them some perspective and to give them the notion that there is a story here, there is something here for them, even though they don't have Beyonce in the film or Taylor Swift.
That's great information. Thanks, Tom.
Yep.
Sheila, I'm going to shame you, even though you didn't shame me. One of your first campaigns that everybody knows, isn't it? Am I right? The 911 pain or
Oh my God.
Yes, you have to talk about that.
I hate you.
Everybody knows that. please.
I really don't like you now.
Yes, you do. Yes, you do.
It is my pox
Everybody
on
knows it,
humanity.
Sheila. That's why I want people to understand that, you know, how amazing what you started. You actually started a movement, so that's why. So please just elaborate.
And
on
I
that.
wrote the franchise.
Oh,
Doesn't
explain
matter.
it. It's 911 pain. Am I correct?
Yeah, 411 pain.
411 pain. Yeah, that everybody
Um,
sees that everywhere, right? She started that concept. That's pretty cool, you know. So
You know, I was driving up to Natchez and I see these billboards everywhere in all these states. And I think, oh God, help me. I'm so sorry. I apologize. I see them on every bus in Florida. There's every iteration now of them. And it was funny because a lawyer group had contacted me to come and do their advertising. And I'm sitting there and they put into their machine my commercials for 411 pain. And they said, "Do you think you can do something like this?" And I said, "Well, yeah, I could." And they didn't believe me that I did it. And I didn't get the job.
no, that's even funnier.
That's funny.
That's it. But Sheila's amazing. I mean, you know, so she's been one of many firsts. So I just wanted to call her out and put her in the spotlight of, you know, being things that people see every day across the state of Florida and beyond is because of Sheila. So
most of my clients aren't actually in Florida, but that is my shame spiral. Yes, thank you.
Very nice. Very nice. All right.
They're great guys.
Roger.
And actually, just back up, all the data that came into the TV stations for their media buys qualified them or quantified them as lawyers, but they weren't. They're chiropractors.
Interesting. Interesting. Roger, I'm going to have you come on down. Let me add your spotlight so people can see you. Go ahead and unmute yourself and ask your question.
Well, first of all, I hope you can hear me.
Yes.
Very nice to meet all of you. That's my first time here. I was recommended to join this because we're making a movie in Miami in July. I have to do a little sidebar, which I'm getting calls because we just had an earthquake in New York City. So the whole house shook, and we never get earthquakes in New York. And my mother's calling everybody else. But anyway, I stayed focused because I see that what you folks are doing is great for film. We have a film that we're shooting in July, August in Miami. It's our second film in Miami. They're low budget films, $250K. This one is going to be non-SAG. When I jumped into helping the other movie, I've done marketing and PR and all that, mostly for theater for more than 10 years. But now we're finding a challenge. Everything has changed after the pandemic. The media is, I know, John, you mentioned that where you are, the media is very receptive. But we're not finding that. And I know, Tom, about the relationship building. I've lost a lot of friends who used to work in media. They've moved on. They have a blog, a podcast maybe, but they're not doing what they used to do. So how do we deal with these changes? Any suggestions from projects happening in Florida? Yeah, podcasts are great, Catherine. That might be, worth pursuing. Any secrets you have that you'd like to share on marketing and PR?
Well, I'll draft off of what Sheila had said. It's content, Roger. They need content, no matter if they've moved into a podcast or doing something that's different from where they were on a national broadcasting platform, let's say. They still are looking for stories and story ideas. And to break down your script and to look at the various aspects and be creative and look to see what might be relevant to what's happening in the world. Maybe not an earthquake, that might be too soon. But still, lots of things. If you look at it and say, how can this bring in some other story or some other representation of what's happening in the real world through our story. It easy for me to say, and it depends on your story and your script, but content is king, and it's simple as that in some ways, you know.
Yeah,
Thanks, Roger.
that's appreciated. Thank you.
You bet.
Okay. I'm going to hit one question in the chat, and then we're going to go share up there. Okay, so from the chat, in the era of pay to play, how do you recommend successfully publicizing with a smaller budget in mind? How do you best secure budget and coverage expectations with a production? What's the best way to approach that conversation? Again, I mean, that's a good point. A lot of things are, yeah, we'll publish your story or we'll give you coverage, but you got to buy ad space and those type of things. So how do you deal with that? What are your recommendations?
Well, there is a lot of pay for play, and I try to avoid that, although it's sometimes difficult to do. And if you don't have the budget, you don't have the budget, and there's not much you can do about it. So you'll go somewhere else. Maybe you go for a smaller media outlet, someone like you who doesn't have a budget or doesn't have the cachet or the visibility, but they still are in the process of building their business and building their profile, and the two of you can help each other that way. The basics don't change. The ability to write, the ability to pitch, the ability to build relationships. It just forces you to look in other directions, and maybe it's not going to be the Wall Street Journal or the Associated Press, but it could be something less. But you build those up, and you look at the pyramid. You got to start at the bottom so that it can support something at the top.
Sheila, you had something to say. Yep.
Yeah, if I were you, I would go after any writer who is writing about the kinds of story or issues that you're addressing. I would chase after them and have your pitch buttoned up in writing, and be able to deliver it quickly and efficiently. Make sure that you've got everything buttoned up. Here's the people who are ready to talk to you. These are the, this is the talent I have, or here's the issue area is human trafficking, or whatever you can contemporize in terms of your sell and what they've already done. You never know. They might have gotten good traction on that issue, and they're looking to more develop that and see its full articulation in the general conversation culturally, and you may find great success that way.
Agreed.
Good suggestions. Quick sidebar before I bring Cher down. I think he's in the audience. A few years ago, we did an amazing episode of the Film Florida podcast with a unit publicist, Michael Bummel. And it is episode 75, and it was from May of 2021. So it's a few years back, but I highly recommend, if you are interested in this topic overall, find that episode on the Film Florida podcast and listen to it. It's episode 75. It was an awesome conversation, a lot of great stories, a lot of great history, a lot of great, information about being a unit publicist in our industry. So make sure you check out that episode. Okay, Cher, I'm going to bring you down, add the spotlight, and go ahead and unmute and ask your question. And then Steve, we're going to go to you after this, and then that will wrap things up. Go ahead, Cher.
Good morning and greetings from Duval County. My question is, since I want to get crystal clear, I want to get clarity here. When you say that having a podcast or creating a podcast centered around content is key, do you mean, for example, there's been podcasts for popular franchises, True Blood, just about any show that you can think of, has had a podcast even started by some of their own on-screen talent, not just an outside PR firm. Is that the type of content that you're meaning? Because certainly I am a podcaster on Twitch. I have contemplated going, creating a podcast around some of my personal favorite series that have been approved for new seasons, that sort of thing. Is that what you're meaning?
Well, what I had in mind is if you have need for content and I have the need to promote the film or the series that we're working on, you and I need to talk. Well, how can I fold into what you want and desire, and also from our end, use your platform as a way to enhance ours. So it's basically, what stories are you looking for? What angles might interest you and your podcast audience, and how can I provide that for you?
And if somebody doesn't respond, don't, or you don't get the, and you can't hit it and quit it. You gotta know has to translate to not yet. Develop a relationship, just keep coming at it. And then you become, okay, when someone's challenged with getting something up and running quickly, oh, I know somebody who can deliver that, then there you are.
Yes, Sheila, and for the purposes of my pitching your podcast to my cast and my director and my producer, it's sometimes helpful. Nobody's going to sit and listen to a whole half hour of what you've done or 15 minutes. If you put together a sizzle reel of some of the greatest hits of what you've done in the podcast, then they get a sense of who you are and how you operate quickly, and they'll be more inclined to move in your direction if that's done properly.
Thank you very much,
you, everyone.
Cher. Absolutely. And Steve, we're going to add your spotlight so people can see you. Come on and go ahead and ask your question.
Hi. Well,
Hi.
First of all, thank you, Sheila and Tom, for sharing your entertaining stories and experience. Great listening to you. I have a question. My new role is now an independent producer, and I'm really getting into producing documentaries, and I'm doing it on my own budget. And I have actually a movie that has been through the festival circuit and won some awards, and now it's playing at a local theater here in Hollywood, Florida. If anyone's in town on April 12th and 13th, it's a 60-minute documentary about the Hollywood Broadwalk and Hollywood Beach. And so, entering these new roles, it's very, I don't know what to do to get people in the seats, quite frankly. I'm doing Facebook and social media, and I was just curious if you have any tips. Like I said, it's coming up in a week and a half. I know I don't have that much time, but maybe for the next one, or if you have any advice on how to promote our independent movies that we're creating, I'd appreciate it. Thank you.
I can answer that really quickly. You should give us the information, because you're in Broward County, and we get that information out all the time for films, especially for our local filmmakers and what's ever showing in our local theaters. So definitely should get, send us an email, send us an email in Film Lauderdale. So
yeah. At the risk of landing you in jail, what about stunts? What about something that is done in public? Something that is unexpected. I don't know what the content of that story is, but if there's a location where you've shot your film, and there's something that sort of dovetails nicely into the content of what you've done, and creating some noise that way.
What was the purpose? What was the genesis of this whole?
Well, Well, the genesis of the project, I'm a big fan of history. I'm a previous president of the Hollywood Historical Society, and they have a weekly lecture series. And they approached me and said, hey, why don't you be a guest at one of our lecture series? And I know you like to make videos, and why don't you just, do whatever you want, so this was about 3 years ago. And I started looking through all my archival footage of just me riding my bicycle around on the Broadwalk with my iPhone. And I combined this with some interviews of people from the Historical Society. And I came up with something that I'm like, wow, this is really interesting. And I think people beyond the historical, whatever interest would enjoy. So I started entering it into film festivals, the Fort Lauderdale Film Festival, and also international film festivals. And, it's taking on its own life now, but I'm really running into a roadblock because the publicity and distribution are so unfamiliar to me. And these are areas I really need to strengthen for this project and future projects.
So some of the themes that this touches are some of the allied, obviously you're going to get support from the Historical Society, but is there conservation involved? Is there tourism involved? What are you doing to expand your sphere of influence with those allied organizations that would have a vested interest in learning and engaging and supporting the,
Yeah, and to Sheila's point, is there a preservation aspect to this? And all of these constituents have newsletters and ways in which they can communicate with their people. And I don't know how big the theater is, but that you might be able to at least make sure that everyone who is involved with the Historical Society is aware and gets an invite.
And supports it, because those seats, those butts in the seats, you can market that. We were sold out.
Right.
That's spin that you can work with. So, and you never know who you're talking to, right? For your next, because you're really always got to be throwing the net out further forward so that your next project is being seeded. Because sometimes we put our head down and we're so focused on dealing with that, we look up and we don't have the next thing coming in the door. So
right.
It's a twofer.
And anyone within walking distance of the theater, where they park their cars and put a flyer under the windshield wiper, or cards in the Starbucks stores, or go talk to the local retailers around the area and say free tickets for a movie. Unless you're not charging anybody to come in there, are you, or are you?
Well, it's kind of a sad story, because I reached out to the film festival, the Fort Lauderdale Film Festival, and anyway, long story short, they are just giving me the theater, but they're keeping all the profits. The tickets are $9. So
Okay.
I don't know if that's a good deal, but I figured getting the word out there and getting some publicity is better than, the other option would be for me to rent the theater and then completely promote it myself, and then
And there's
perhaps
a good and good. Don't overthink it. Don't make perfect the enemy of good.
Right.
This is good, and then there's good enough. You've got
right.
something in, work it.
Yeah. And Steve, I'm going to put my email in so I can, give you some local advice. How's that?
Thank you, Sandy. I appreciate it.
All right, Steve, thank you very much. Okay, Sheila and Tom, I want to give you an opportunity to plug. Give everybody website, email, social media, upcoming projects, anything that you want to make sure people are aware of. Sheila, you go first.
I'm happy to be helpful in any way. I really try and focus my effort now after the pandemic I went gray during the pandemic, so I call it my the gray pandemic, the graying of the pandemic. I had entirely too much fun during the pandemic, and one of the things that I did was I stepped away from the day-to-day management of my companies, and I step in when there's bloody stumps in the street, or projects that I'm just wholly and completely interested in. And I think it's something, it's something that I earned. Of my 3 children, my youngest, who's now 26, and here in Mississippi, which is why I'm here, going back and forth, I barely remember her as an infant. That's how hard I was working. So I earned it. And come at me with your needs, and if I can refer you on, great. If we can help you, great. At this point in my life professionally, I just want to help people. I don't want to.
Yeah.
I don't want to do anything other than promote myself. I'm happy. I'm happy. I'm in the sweet spot. So
yeah,
if I can help you get there, I'm your girl.
What's the company's website?
TropicSurvival.com, cometads.com, and UV, YUVIE, you in a movie.
Cool. Tom, how about you?
Yeah, well, I can give you my email address. Is probably the best thing to do, and it's tom@tomtannopr.com, TANNOPR.com. I have no website. I used to have one, but it became too much of a burden. So, and I was working in Hollywood at the time and didn't need it. Then the pandemic hit, and I wish I had one. But now I'm too lazy to put one up. So these kinds of forums help for sure.
And
Excellent.
Mine is kind of dormant anyway. You can just email me, Sheila@tropicsurvival.com. I mean, we have enough business. It's funny, it's like the plumber with broken pipes a little bit.
Yeah, and I'm on Facebook, and you can follow me there. I'm looking at fishing videos and fossil hunting. So
excellent. Well, that's going to wrap up another edition of Film Florida Friday. Thanks to Sheila and Tom for being with us, and thanks to all of you for joining today. As always, thanks to Katie Collins for helping me wrangle and prepare for Film Florida Friday each month. We're going to be back next month with another edition talking about the issue of whether someone is an employee or an independent contractor, kind of a hot topic in our industry. Be on the lookout for that information in email blasts and on our social media pages. As always, thanks to our Film Florida members for their continued support. Quick sidebar, both Tom and Sheila are members of Film Florida, so we appreciate that very much. If you're not a member of Film Florida, we hope you'll consider joining the organization at filmflorida.org. Keep up with everything we're doing on our social media pages. And finally, please make sure you check out the Film Florida podcast, which is available on most major podcast outlets. And be sure to subscribe so you don't miss any episodes. Thanks again for being here, everybody. Just stay safe out there.
Thanks, everyone.
thank you, John. Bye, Sheila.
Bravo.
Bye.
Thank
Take
you.
care.
Thanks for everything, everyone. See you next time.